Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of the Q&A. Got a bunch of cool questions for today, but before we get into those, did want to talk about some of the past videos that came out this week, namely because there's a lot of stuff to touch up on. Specifically, I feel like, maybe I'm overreacting, I feel like I keep making a lot of mistakes, been a little bit stressed out by a few of the videos, and we'll go through. So, yesterday we had the competition video, which thankfully a lot of you guys really seem to enjoy, but the sad truth is a lot of entries didn't appear like on the footage in that video. Even a really good art piece of Shiro somebody mentioned, which I was intending to have in the video, never ended up making it on there in the end. This kind of stuff really sucks. It's been a weird thing for me to kind of trying to head a competition like that, try and do something fun for everyone, and then, you know, it feels horrible for me to miss something like that. People put tons of effort into something, and then you end up missing it, so that was pretty stressful yesterday. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the result at the very least, and we'll try and change things up a little bit for the next competition. The day before that, of course, we had the recap on the Berserker livestream stuff. There are so many more things that I want to be able to talk about with the Berserker, but I, made 3 huge mistakes, things I wish I could just erase. Actually, that whole video, there were a lot of edits I did. There was an edit originally, and the original commentary had said something like, oh, the new Earthshaker has a longer range on it. But when I was editing, I was like, is that really true? I look, and then I realized, no, it's not true at all. I just keep making these little mistakes. So in that video, I said that Eviscerate wasn't an elite skill in Guild Wars 1. It actually was. I'm thinking of Executioner's Strike, which is what I always used to use freaking in Guild Wars 1. They were both the alternate elites, both kind of the same concept, but different takes. Eviscerate was the one everyone really used. You had Eviscerate and you had Decapitate. They were both elites. Right at the start of the video, yeah, they brought the hammer on the stream. This wasn't the hammer from the Colossus Fractal. See, I immediately thought that, because it's got the guy, holding the stuff up, and it looks like the dude you see in the Fractal. No, that's the Legendary. That's the Juggernaut, apparently. And I was asked, do I even hammer? Apparently not, no. All I really know about the friggin' hammer is the cool chrome effect that it puts on you. And then the other thing that's kind of digging at me about that video, and I should qualify, is I said, you know, it'd be really cool to remove these cooldowns on the runes that proc stuff on your elite skill. And a suggestion like that is just ridiculous. Maybe they could drop the cooldowns to 20 seconds so that it's still got synergy with Headbutt, but it's ridiculous because you've got the Revenant with their cooldownless elites, or, you know, double elites and stuff, and then you've got as well, more importantly, the Engineer with Mortar Kit. So you'd have Engineers running Sunless runes, and they pop on the Mortar Kit and they fear everyone, and they pop on the Mortar Kit and they fear everyone. So yeah, alright, that was a bit of a mistake. Day before that as well, we had the Reshade video. Lots of effort went into the Reshade video, but I feel bad about that one too, because friggin' so many people were crashing. There were a few things that I knew would crash Reshade and just completely neglected to mention. If you tried the Reshade thing, guys, and you're still watching, but you kind of gave up with that because it was crashing, pretty sure Razor Synapse breaks things, particularly on Windows 10. It can break things when you try and use, post-processing injectors, and there's just a lot more issues with that than I thought, and I've been kind of inundated with tech support questions from people too, and you know, that's a shame. When I did Sweet Effects, when I did Gem Effects, it was kind of a basic thing I threw out to people, and there weren't so many issues. But there are with Reshade. I don't know whether that's just because people are more excited to try it because I showed off the power of Reshade a bit better than I showed off the power of those other ones. Ultimately, with Gem Effects, what did I do? I slapped some Gaussian blur on the screen at the start and walked into a dry top sandstorm. Did also want to take this opportunity to talk a little bit about the future of the channel. This is a Q&A today. We're doing these a little bit more frequently. People enjoy them, though, and we did daily Q&As before the release of the game. It's not so bad to do a few before the release of Heart of Thorns. There are a couple of other shows I want to do. Episode 2 of Did You Know is very much on my horizon. I'm curious to see how that will do, as well as the perhaps last episode of Tyria 3D on a bunch of Conquest maps. I keep teasing at this. It will come, maybe even tomorrow if there's no elite specialization teaser, but this is really interesting, guys. There's a straight up, and I mentioned this on Reddit, so I'll say it in a video here, there's a straight up clone of a MOBA game type available, and there's even a PvP map staged near the Tengu Wall. Variety of cool things, and that will come, I promise. I know some of you are looking out for that. Beyond that, there are some big things going on in the background. Streaming looks like a very real possibility, and there'll be announcements and stuff to do with that, as well as something else going forward. Alright, there you go. That's the channel update done. Let's have a look at the questions. Good to get that out of my chest. Alright, if you've got any questions you want to ask for future episodes, or as I'm talking, all you have to do is put them in the comment section, and that's where I'll get them from. So the first one's from George VV, who says, WP, are you going to play Fallout 4? The answer to this is no. Why? It's not because I hate the franchise. I've just never really played much of the franchise. My experience of Fallout mostly is memes and things I see on the internet. hearing from people very close to me how they enjoyed Fallout, and watching a Let's Play from a guy of New Vegas that eventually got cut short when he got hooked on meth and then disappeared from YouTube. So that's my experience of Fallout. And if Heart of Thorns especially comes out around the same time as Fallout, you guys know which game I'm going to be playing. Next one's from Reinhardt Coatsy, who says, do you feel, and this is a very interesting topic to me, do you feel that classes are losing their flavor and are just going to meld even closer together with further expansions? Things which are supposed to make classes unique are just moving onto other classes, like with elite specializations getting mechanics from other classes, like Ellie's getting shouts and Mesmer's getting wells or something, etc. And eventually, they will all end up with the same weapons. How many different ways can you really swing a sword? Maybe they're going too far with making classes being able to do everything. Since they've said these classes are all there will ever be, future expansions or updates might want to add more to what we have, but it will just make this worse. So this is one of those big topics. It's the kind of question that sometimes I'll see, and if I'm not in the right mood for it, I'll think, oh, there's too much to say, let's not do it. But I do want to tap into a few elements of this discussion. The first and most obvious one I think many of us are thinking as we listen to this question is the fact that you can only have one elite specialization. I'm always surprised how often I see messages around the community of people saying, whoa, it looks like you can only have one slotted. Yet this was announced on the original post. Interestingly, on the original post, talking about the elite specialization system, they said for now we have gone with a system where you can only have one elite specialization, but that is suggesting that maybe in the future that could change. I absolutely think it should stay as only one elite specialization. Why? Well, for two main reasons. One, it helps to really exaggerate that identity each elite specialization gives you. Like, really, if you could have three, all right, you'd be like a chronomancer, summoner, illusionist, right? And that part of you that screams chronomancer seems to be diluted. That's not going to be so interesting. But more importantly, it directly addresses your question. Because you can only have one elite specialization, and each elite specialization, yes, is borrowing stuff from other classes, but only piecemeal. Even if they continue to add them, you're never going to have one build that can do everything. You can have a class with the potential to do everything through multiple elite specializations, but there won't be that one build that can do everything. Through this, I think that you can really maintain that identity, even going a long way into Guild Wars 2's life, years and years and years after they potentially, have like 10 elite specializations each. But there's more to this discussion as well that I kind of want to talk about, because I completely do agree that Guild Wars 2's system really struggles with identity. It seems like they had some real purity in initial design for the classes. I talked about this in a recent video. The idea originally was that warriors didn't really get condition cleanse, and the idea was you would get that through your teammates. In fact, I remember some of the really old QT comps we saw in PvP. They would run like pure power comps. They were really leading the way with power necros, for example. Everyone used to play QandA necros around launch, but these guys kind of showed how powerful Lich Form and stuff was. They'd run a lot of power, but they also had like a great sword warrior H-man, and he would run with QT Vayne, and specifically they'd have like their DD aura sharing Ellie helping and giving support and Condi cleanse, as well as Fury and Swiftness, a lot of other stuff, to that warrior, and this was sort of in the design, that some classes wouldn't have stuff, and that's where the teamwork elements would come in. But as time goes forward, these things have been diluted. Warriors ended up having tons of ways to deal with conditions. Now, you can make the argument that it's because the idea of giving a class initially no way to deal with conditions was a mistake, because conditions are so prevalent in the game and it is so punishing not to have that. So they eventually changed only on this idea of conditions. But that's not true. There were also a lot of situations where you'd have a class who had this condition, this condition, this condition, and this condition. And that was it. Or this boon, this boon, this boon, this boon, and that was it. And you can look at how Torment has spread from initially just being in a couple of places to being all over the shop, and in a lot of cases used more effectively on new classes and builds than it ever was originally. A good example for me as an Elementalist player, Elementalists never had retaliation. That was one of our, defining things. We didn't get great access to that. But now, one of the most common traits people take in the Arcane line gives Elementalists retaliation, so now they have that, and again the lines have been blurred. There are very few places that this has remained, specifically on the boon side of things. Warriors lacking protection is probably the best example of purity that they've kept in my mind. So what are they going for, and what is a good system? Well, here's kind of the way that I view it. I think all core specializations, all right, all the base functionalities of the class, each class should have some access to a wide variety of things. Some access to most boons, some access to most conditions in some capacity or another. And specifically what I think all core classes should be capable of is they should all be capable of doing flat damage. There should be flat damage builds for that class. They should all be capable of doing condition damage. There should be condition damage builds for that class. And so far we see that they're going for this Mark II. Another really basic thing we always forget with Guild Wars 2, but all base classes should have the capability of dealing melee damage or ranged damage. And then in addition to be able to do, you know, a handful of the boons in the game, a handful of the conditions in the game, everyone really should have some way of being able to CC through dazes, stuns, things like that. And everyone should have some way to support their allies. Whether that support is through pumping out a ton of might onto them, whether that support is by healing them, or by providing reflects and blocks for them, there's got to be support somewhere on that core class. The last thing really to talk about, we've already discussed boons, but is swiftness. I think all classes as well, you see, there used to be these ideas of there was distinction in mobility, and some classes would have a lot more swiftness access than others, and very slowly, very gradually, they've been like, okay, everyone gets kind of this almost perma-swiftness deal going on with them. Look at the changes most recently to Mesmer's Signet of Inspiration and throwing that swiftness on there. This is something over time they've just decided everyone should have an awful lot of swiftness uptime. And then what I think is each class can then push one of those things a lot further. So with the swiftness or the mobility thing, you're going to have warriors. Specifically, Berserker's a great candidate for this. If you look at the Berserker, Berserkers are going to be the fastest, highest mobility things in the game. They can run Greatsword, Sword Warhorn, Bull's Rush, the new Leap ability, and Headbutts. And then they can trait to remove Immobilize on all of those and to shrug off CCing conditions on all of that stuff. And they have a ton of mobility. Actually, sincerely now will be outpacing Thieves, who were kind of level with them before this point. So that's going to be something quite huge. And I think, you know, you're never going to see that appear on a Necromancer. But with Necromancer, you're always going to see a lot more condition manipulation being rolled around. In fact, the footage in the background on this video, I'm playing a build I never really thought I'd enjoy too much, and this is the kind of Celestial Signet Necromancer build. I'm running it because I was desperately trying to make... I played a bit about Burn Guardian early in the week, then I played a lot of Burn Ellie, trying to make Burn Ellie work, and I was going with this Ring of Fire concept, even with like Flame Axe and stuff. But I found that every time I was fighting a Necro now, under the new trait system, they have so many ways to transfer conditions from themselves onto you. It's just like impossible to beat them. So to learn it a bit more, I decided to play the spec, and it is an awful lot of fun. This is kind of off topic, but my god, I'm still not super high skill cap, and you'll see me wasting some of the most key abilities like the Star 4 and stuff a lot. But damn, you'll see me like running in and out of flame walls, flame rings, specifically to give myself tons of burn and then transfer it onto someone and just blow people up. It's really, really cool. So there are going to be distinctions that way in the weighting of these things, but everyone's going to have that base amount. And then last of all, I do think there are some things in the game that will... It's not a question of everyone sort of has access to it, but someone has a greater access. I think there are some things that absolutely hardwired some classes should get and others should not. I just think that's the way it's got to be. Now, this is just the core specializations. I think an elite specialization can add this functionality one at a time, piecemeal, to that class. But we should never see, you know, them be across all core specializations. So here are the things that I've identified, and when ArenaNet start designing PvE to require all of these things, we're going to see the meta shift in a really cool way. But so being unblockable, I think that should only be on some classes and some elite specializations. I think having the ability to stealth should only be on some classes and some elite specializations. Specifically as well, counter stealth. Again, I've talked about this a lot recently. If we have a lot of stealthing enemies in PvE, this could be something we really start to consider. Who do we want to start counter-stealthing for us? Should only be on some classes, and that's what we currently see too. The ability to blink, as in actually teleport rather than physically move yourself. For example, with Warrior again, I don't think we're ever going to see Warrior blinks be a thing unless, again, they're on an elite specialization. The ability to taunt, the ability to give quickness. Even Mesmer sharing just straight up invulnerability to people around them is something we see right now, and I think that will, you know, they'll remain on exclusive classes. And lastly, the ability to boon strip or convert. These are the kind of things I think are like hard things you'll only see on some classes or some elite specializations. And as the game develops and we want more boon stripping and conversion and we want more taunting and stuff like that, we could go in a good place. And so Heart of Thorns is releasing resistance and taunt. There's always the possibility that future expansions add more of these like tools we only see on certain classes. So I don't think the situation is that dire as long as the devs understand themselves who gets what. All right, that took way too long. Let's move on to the next question. Deviant Shark, who says, what's with your video frequency? Or rather, on what basis do you decide to make a video on a certain topic? Sometimes a video feels a bit forced, while others you make, you sound very enthusiastic. Is it because sometimes you don't really know what else you should cover, so you just cover whatever you thought about? Yeah, this absolutely happens. The dream world is you do a video every single day. That's not always the easiest thing to do, and recently, for most of this year, it has been fairly easy. I'm not saying I hate it every day for this year. It's very easy because it's been possible to do like 3, maybe even 4 news videos in a single week. You know, that's an immense amount of stuff that basically ArenaNet are handing content creators on a plate. What would be nice if Guild Wars 2 was a little bit more sandboxy or had more modes and things within it that was really had a lot of, you know, inherent entertainment in it without them having to drop more patches into the game. So we haven't really been in that place with Guild Wars 2. I think that's a big reason why I've ended up like looking into doing this hardcore challenge and stuff. But yeah, sometimes it can be a struggle. I'm a firm believer though that even a kind of meh video is better than no video. There are people out there who, you know, like Matt will want to do very high quality videos and they'll be more infrequent for that reason, but, you know, every single one he wants to put out really wants to hit this very, very high bar. I've always done YouTube in the complete opposite way. I've wanted to always have something out there for people to watch so you can kind of get a bit of a routine and a bit of schedule, and just, it's so fun to talk to you guys and get a lot of comments and stuff rolling in. So, yeah, I try and do one every day. I think it's better to do one even if it's on a kind of a topic I may not be so enthusiastic about. But most of the time, you know, I do try and have some base enthusiasm about whatever I'm saying. I've never done a video that I just don't care at all about. Never. Moving on, Jay Randomness says, did you ever think about making a website? I know a few small business owners that deal in internet-based stuff that say it's a must-have. Just wondering if you ever thought about it, or if maybe there's a reason you don't have one. Just curious. I don't see any reason to actually have a website. I don't think it's an expense that would pay off at all. What can I offer on a website? Like, really? A different way of finding my videos? A place for discussion? Well, we've got a subreddit, we've got Twitter, we've got the comments on the videos. I find all of that stuff absolutely acceptable and fine. The only benefit I honestly see to a website, and I know people say, oh, you can host your own videos and you can get a bigger cut on the ads that you run and stuff like that. The only benefit I really see, because I think that the website would get so little traffic, is just in this bizarre scenario where YouTube goes down. It would be really nice to have my own legs to stand on and a place to support myself, but that would just, it would almost function like just a backup for all the videos. And even then, it's not very good. I could just download all the videos on my hard drive if I really wanted that, but the reason I don't do it is because I can't download all the stats that come with them easily. You know, if I could download every video I ever had on YouTube, with all the comments, with all the likes and dislikes, with all that historical stuff that came out too that I can get as stats on YouTube, if I could have that all here, then I'd really like to do that, and I'd just download it. But getting a website of mine, I just don't see what I'd offer, or why people would go there. I kind of think of having your own website as something for truly massive guys. If you're truly massive and the expense of running it, you can hire someone to run it, or the expense itself of putting it up there and having a lot of work go into it isn't something you have to worry too much about, fine, have a website. Or I kind of think of having your own website as a very kind of old media or early internet media thing. YouTube has been fine for me, so I have no interest in it. Moving on, Lozin Play says, was that one of your Dead is Dead characters who died? It's true, it was. The footage in the last episode was a Permadeath character, and he did die. I'll tell you guys one thing, there is a huge difficulty spike when you get to Gendaran Fields. A huge one. I don't know whether it's just because I'm a warrior, and you'd think warrior does well, but this really flips things on his head. And now I'm really struggling. You know, like playing as a thief where you get some projectile deflects and you get an awful lot of blinds. You can just black powder and then pretty much secure a kill against an individual foe is so useful. As a warrior, it's scary stuff. And it gets very, very difficult. Even in that video, I think I died actually in Kessex Hills, right? The character wasn't deleted because it's still testing. That character's died maybe 6 times. I'm trying my utmost to not die. But I'm using this as like a gauge of difficulty, and you know, it would be pointless for me to restart right now before I really start showing the challenge off and doing videos and stuff about it. Next question's from Wild's Wonderful World, who says, do you watch any competitive or esport games like CSGO or Dota 2? No, I was very into League of Legends a long time ago. The only thing I really watch that you can call competitive, and there are people who will debate you as to whether you can call this an esport or not, is Hearthstone. That's the only competitive game I consistently watch right now. And no, I wouldn't say Guild Wars 2 is in that place. Next is Brian Turner, who says, is there a guild that you would recommend that respects and revels in Guild Wars lore as much as you that I might join? This is totally a bad thing that I'm doing right here. A long time ago, like a year ago, maybe a year and a half ago, I was a part of, there is a guild of many of the people you find on the lore forums on the official site. There are a lot of very smart people who know a lot more about the lore than I do, absolutely. And I was a part of their community. They outreached to me a while ago, but I never really knew anyone there. I barely talked, and then I just ended up leaving the guild. But those guys were all interested in the lore, and you could probably glean a lot of good information. This is a bad answer at so many levels, because I'm advertising someone else's guild as if they're even recruiting, and I don't even remember the name of it. But I guess what I'm saying is go onto the forums and ask for lore-based guilds, and specifically talk to people and ask some of the prominent members of the lore section on the official forums what guilds they're a part of, and you'll find you get your foot in a good door. Next question is from Origolio, who said, if you were able to take the Guild Wars universe and make a game in a completely different genre with it, what genre would it be? I think my instinctual answer here is action platforming adventure. I would love to see some kind of Zelda or Metroidvania style big adventure game, maybe with a different art style, you know, like a more cartoony, kiddie art style even, but set in Tyria. Or maybe even something a bit grittier and a bit more depressed in its tone, a bit like Shadow of the Colossus. I think anything that brings that scale back to Tyria. You know, one thing I can say is whatever game I would have, I wouldn't set it on all of Tyria. I would set it in like a tiny region of Crater, or a tiny region of the remotest areas of Ascalon, or a small section of the Shiver Peaks, and it's this entire game based in the mountains. But the game is huge in terms of land mass. It's massive. So you get this really, really zoomed in look at a very small piece of the world, and that brings the scale back and it makes it feel like a living, breathing world, instead of what we have with Guild Wars 2, where it's like, oh, 4 maps, and this is all of Crater, and it doesn't really match up to what you would hope to really get immersed in it, right? So that's one thing I think I'd love to do. There's other things though, like I'm missing Grimrock a little bit at the moment. It would be really cool to just like play a game like Grimrock. Again, it takes a very small area, maybe even just a single dungeon, and it's littered throughout it is lore and references to Guild Wars stuff. In fact, hell, what I just said there, you could easily make a Grimrock mod that was just based in this universe, so maybe that's not so crazy to think about. Next one's from Truck3099, who says, WP, do you think they should release the Revenant class early for people who pre-purchase Heart of Thorns? That's a pretty interesting idea. Because we know they have the technology to do it. The tech's in place. They could release Revenant early for specific people. That's a very, very curious thought. I wonder whether in future expansions they may even consider something like that. As, you know, like, okay, you get the standard edition, you just get to get the expansion when it comes out. Or if you get the deluxe edition, this is like an extra perk. The perks and incentives for getting the higher editions were really terrible for Heart of Thorns. I really want physical-based stuff, collector's edition-based stuff again, like desperately want that kind of thing. But this is totally something they could do. I wonder how offended the community would be. And lastly, a question I can't fully answer, but from Matt Gearing, who says, so how does the lore work for the different races? What I mean is, does the hero of Shamor exist at the same time as the Slayer of Sormir? If this is true, then which one killed Zaitan? Because of the human storyline, the hero of Shamor killed Zaitan and his pack commander, but for Norns it's the Slayer. Of course, there are other races, but they don't use a name like hero or Slayer, so it's easy to identify those. So for lore purposes, which race is the packed commander? I'm not sure. I don't know how ArenaNet are dealing with this one. Perhaps there is a statement in an interview somewhere. I can expect this would be the kind of thing people would ask in interviews. I can point back to the first game, though, and I am fairly confident that canonically there were 3 different heroes in the first game, one born of each continent. So the hero who dealt with the Flameseeker prophecies is not canonically the same hero who dealt with the faction stuff and was raised at Xingji Monastery, or not raised, trained at Xingji Monastery. And that is also not the same hero who was a Sunspear and ended up going on to fight Abaddon, though there is space for the Flameseeker Prophecies hero to have been present at the Abaddon fight kind of thing. And then for Eye of the North, I think the idea is they just kind of all went there. That's kind of what I tried to embody as well in my Let's Play of the game. That's one of the reasons I specifically did a different character for each campaign, so you got that true perspective, the canonical perspective. But even that I'm not 100% sure on, and how they're doing it in Guild Wars 2, That's a curious one. It's just one of these weird things that has come about their odd attempts to do the personal story and give us so many choices and whatnot. I wonder how differently the personal story would have turned out if at an early discussion about how to structure the story of Guild Wars 2, they thought of this question to themselves and they thought, no, we're going to have 5 different characters and they're all going to have a totally unique story and it's going to be told totally uniquely. And then, you know, that could have felt more rewarding to play as well. And this answer should be clear in a perfect world, but it's not. So anyway, there you go, guys. Interesting discussion today. Thank you so much for watching. A bit of an update on the channel as well, I suppose. And I guess I will see you next time.